Let's take a few minutes to think about census records as it relates to the Upchurch family. Anyone who has worked with the family history records will often turn to the census records recorded in each decade since 1790 in the United States and will find valuable information. Later we'll talk a little bit about how we've organized those records, but for the moment let's just reflect on the very first census, the 1790 federal census, the first one. Right away, out of the chute, the Upchurch family hit the jackpot because we had 11 Upchurch families listed on the first 1790 census. And those records on that census form a bedrock of information for our family. Now, they're not perfect because I wouldn't be surprised if there weren't some Upchurches that were missed. And certainly we have more researching to do because there were probably Upchurch descendants in the female line that no longer had the Upchurch name, and you didn't find it under Upchurch. But sooner or later, if we look hard enough, we may find some more members of the Upchurch family in those early years who were in households headed by someone other than an Upchurch because it was a female Upchurch that married someone with another name. But the fact is that in that first census, all of those 11 heads of households were in North Carolina. We have told previously about how the family existed for quite a few decades in Virginia, where Michael Upchurch I arrived from England in 1638, and that how in the mid-century of the 1700s, we find a great number of the Upchurches who had migrated south and west in Virginia to Brunswick County, Virginia. So they were there early enough that by the 1790 census they'd spilled over into North Carolina. I always hold on the possibility that we may even find other Upchurches that existed in 1790 that didn't get onto the census records because they simply were missed, the census taker didn't get by their house or whatever. And some of these could have been in Virginia or more likely in North Carolina. I've made a couple of charts to illustrate how these 11 heads of households unfolded, and I'd like to spend a little time on that chart, starting with the first 5 generations of the family in America. And I have here on this chart some little yellow tabs with arrows pointing to the 11 individuals who were found on the 1790 census. And you will see that that there were 2 members of the 4th generation of the family, William Upchurch II and Richard Upchurch II, who were there, and the other 9 were members of the 5th generation of the family. They've all settled in North Carolina, and there will be things on the records I can tell you about that don't jump out at you, but which can be derived from these census records. In general, the first 3 columns on this chart tended to settle in central North Carolina, and the 4th category, headed by Michael Upchurch III, head of the Brunswick branch of the family, tended to settle in western North Carolina. So let's start with this big central group headed by Richard Upchurch II, head of the Moccasin Creek Upchurch branch. And note that 6 of his children were on the site with him, and they were either in Wake or Franklin County. And I have made a little chart for the central part of North Carolina to show where these ended up. Now, I put on this chart the note of Brunswick County, Virginia, and you can see where that is located relative to the central North Carolina counties that are important to us today. Actually, Granville County is often mentioned as a place where the Upchurches came, and in that day and time, Granville County was much larger than shown on this map. It included not only what we see as Granville County, but Vance, Warren, and Franklin County as well. Those counties, other counties, Vance, Warren, and Franklin, were created subsequently out of Granville. Now, I've highlighted in yellow the counties where individuals reflected on the 1790 census were located. And we show one in Granville County, and that is William Upchurch II. He's, again, a member of the fourth generation of the family. And we do not find his two children, John and William III. It is most likely that they were there, but in his household and not recorded as separate household members. John Upchurch IV, you perhaps will recall, is the grandfather of John Jordan Upchurch, the most famous Upchurch of all. So that takes care of William Upchurch II and the fact that he landed in Granville County in 1790. But then we see on the border of Franklin and Wake a yellow spot that crosses both counties. And that's because that county line shifted. At one time it was a county line really of Johnson County, and then later the part of this yellow spot fell in Wake, and then it fell back in Franklin, going back and forth. If you really want to know more about that particular location of Franklin and Wake, where Richard Upchurch II settled and where his children, 6 of his children are shown on the 1790 census, you can go to the Upchurch Bulletin on the website and search for the high ground. And that is the key to an article I wrote about this particular area and which county that area fell in at different times and why the confusion rose about which county people were in. But of the 6 people who were sons of Richard Upchurch II, we found that 2 of them were actually shown on the 1790 census in Wake County, and that was Charles Upchurch and Nathan. The other 4 were shown in Franklin County, but the fact is they all lived in a small community called the Moccasin Creek area, which is the creek that flows through the area. The other way of designating the area was Dunn's Township, which was the southernmost township in Franklin County. Now, there are 2 sons of Richard Upchurch II that are not on the 1790 census. That's Abel Upchurch Sr. and Jubal Upchurch I. I think the reason is that in 1790 they were about 15 years old and were probably in the household of their father, not recorded separately by name. They were in the household of Richard Upchurch II. To show you that there's always more to learn about this, it is tantalizing to note that in the 1790 census, Richard Upchurch had 4 individuals, males in his household, and 2 of them were probably the 2 I've just mentioned, Jubal and Abel, but who were the other 2? See, we always hold out hope that we'll find yet 2 more sons of Richard Upchurch II, and they will be heads of new clans in the Upchurch family. I report this to you for the Richard Upchurch II branch of the family, the Moccasin Creek branch, but the same could be true of other branches of the family. In other words, we should not give up looking for more individuals than we have names for, because we can look in the homes of these individuals and see if there were males or females there that could be 5th generation members of the family. Now, on this central North Carolina chart, I show another yellow spot which is on the border of Chatham and Wake, down at the southern part of this county line. And there we find John Upchurch III, another member of the 5th generation of the family. I have enjoyed learning where his 3 sons, John, Stephen, and Samuel went, and I've also enjoyed learning a little bit about the 5 daughters he had, not all of whom we know a lot about, but a couple of them we've got pretty good hints as to their names and maybe even who they married, so there's more research there to be done. I've shown a green spot there on the Wake-Chatham line in this map of North Carolina. not because they were Upchurches there in 1790, but just because I can tell you that there soon would be Upchurches where that green spot is, and that comes from the Wake-Franklin border, and two of those individuals who were on the 1790 census over in that enclave on the Wake-Franklin border would show up in the early years of the 1800s on the Chatham-Wake boundary, creating a new Upchurch enclave. Those individuals were Moses Upchurch and Nathan, both Revolutionary War soldiers. Now let us turn our attention back to the chart and look a little bit at the other parts of the family that were represented in the 1790 census. And these mainly were in this, in the western part of the state, and you see on the right hand, the fourth column in this fifth generation chart, that we have arrows for George Upchurch and William Upchurch IV, as well as for two of their siblings. Now, Sherwood Upchurch, shown there as a sibling, did not appear in the 1790 census, but I suspect he might have belonged there. We haven't been able to find Elizabeth on the census under her married name, Bath Shears, but she could well be there. Now, there's another member of the family that was on the census that really does appear shortly in the western part of the state, and that is on the far left-hand side of this five-generation chart. You see Harmon Upchurch, and when we look at the state map in a moment of western North Carolina, I'll show you where Harmon Upchurch settled. He very well ought to have been on the 1790 census as well. So let's turn our attention to this map of the western part of North Carolina, where you will see two counties highlighted in yellow. One of them is Iredell County, and that is for George Upchurch, the head of the George Upchurch clan, who moved from Brunswick County, Virginia to Iredell County, North Carolina. He was there in 1790 and maybe a little earlier than that, and stayed there for almost at least a decade, maybe more, before moving to Wayne County, Kentucky, where he formed a very large group of Upchurches in that enclave. Now, in Wilkes County, we have that highlighted because that is where William Upchurch IV landed. Now, on the census, we don't find the name of William, but we find the name of his widow, Sarah, because William IV had died in 1787, just before the 1790 census. But his family was well recorded there because of his death. The records came forth, and we could find the names of his children. To the best of my knowledge, in fairly short order, that particular group of Upchurches moved on to other places, some to South Carolina, some to Rutherford County, North Carolina, and on to Henry County, Tennessee. I've highlighted two counties in green because they were counties where individuals of the fifth generation soon showed up, even though they were not on the 1790 census. We showed Stanley County highlighted in green because that's where Harmon Upchurch, head of the Harmon Upchurch clan, was found in the late 1790s and early 1800s. Actually, in those early days, he was shown in Montgomery County because it was a very large county. It embraced what later became Stanley County, as you see on this map. They divided Montgomery County into two parts, and the Pee Dee River, which you see is a squiggly line here, was that part of Montgomery County which was to the west of the Pee Dee River and became known as Stanley, and that's where the Upchurches were all along, Harmon and all of his descendants. And then further on to the west in Rutherford County, that's where we have Sherwood Upchurch, head of the Sherwood Upchurch clan, and he was not on the 1790 census, but well should have been. And there we found he and a great number of his descendants who subsequently moved to other parts of the South. Now, in the process of telling you about these people on the 1790 census, we've in a way given short shrift to the females, because I think there are 6 females that we show as members of the 5th generation, and not a single one of them is shown as head of a household on the 1790 census. It will take more research to learn whether or not they actually were there. So you can see from the records we presented here that the 1790 census provided a great boost of to those who studied the Upchurch family early on, and they gave us some good pointers as to how the family was organized, leading to our 5-generation chart and leading to us understanding where they were in North Carolina as of 1790. I think we've just begun to scratch the surface in learning what we can from the 1790 census. So those of you who are Upchurch enthusiasts, go back to those records and let's look yet one more time.